And then Kip's sister Kristen left for college, leaving her brother behind in Shangri-La.
I saw myself a lot of times as a mediator between my parents and my brother. My parents were getting older. My parents were in their mid-50s. There's a huge generation gap in between there. You know, one little thing that he would do would be awful. And a lot of times I found myself saying, settle down, relax, think about it, think about the students that you teach. What he did was not that bad. And when I left, they didn't have that. I'm sure it was harder. It just wasn't the same. I think he was lonely.
Kristen's departure would change the dynamics in the Kinkle household. The personalities left behind: Faith, emotional and conciliatory; Bill, stern and a bit of an autocrat; and Kip, the catalyst, would increasingly draw the family into conflict. Lonely, an uneven student, not blessed with any particular athletic skill, 12-year-old Kip Kinkle started middle school.
I was saying, well, what's it like in middle school? And he said, well, you know, you could be getting a drink of water and at the water fountain and somebody push your head into the water. And I said, oh, that seems really awful. And I said, did that ever happen to you? And he said, yes, but not anymore. And I said, wow. And he says, well, I don't go to the water fountain, or I look around to make sure there's nobody around before I get a drink now. I said, I've had to learn to kind of be alert.
Weakness is the everlasting bane of every teenage boy. Kip was small, and he could be seen as weak. He pestered his parents to enroll him in a karate class.
I will use my martial arts constructively and defensively.
I think Kip was interested in some self-defense because he just wasn't real happy with some things that some kids would say to him, and he wanted to be able to have the confidence of being able to protect himself if he needed to.
But karate, with its violent overtones, wasn't the sort of sport the Kinkles would ordinarily value. Reluctantly, Bill and Faith gave in to Kip.
Go ahead and punch him right in the nose.
You're always, as a parent, hunting for things for them to feel good about.
Okay, that makes sense.
And then he doesn't feel like he was a disappointment. I feel like that's why Faith and Bill spent as much time hunting for things that for him to do. Karate was one of those things.
Yep, Luke, watch his braces.
Kip seemed to be fashioning for himself a protective layer, an identity as a guy who might be a little bit dangerous.
Oftentimes kids with the difficulties that he had, it tends to wear on them even more. I'm not like all the other kids. I'm not as good as they are. I have these problems, and I'm a disappointment to my parents. And instead of having that be able to help them make some positive changes, it tends to make them make negative choices.
Kip fell in with a rough crowd from out in the country that he rode the bus with every day.
The skaters, smokers group, they definitely get in trouble. Like, these guys have spent time in juvenile detention and been expelled from school like every year since 6th grade, and just endless trouble.
Hanging out at the mall, Kip and his new gang from the country found trouble.
In about 8th grade, he was stealing CDs from like a local store. They had like razor blades that they just like slice off the like sensor. I've heard them say they've like had over 100 each at times.
Of course, Kip was caught. Bill and Faith were obviously upset. They tried to separate Kip from the company he was keeping.
He had some friends who weren't the best quality people. My parents were worried about his friends.
Like a lot of parents of teenagers, friends say the Kinkles felt a little lost.
Maybe these were just difficult times, and all teenagers go through them, and all parents go through them. But in the end, he would grow up, and they would get through these times.
Bill and Faith followed one of the golden rules of parenting. Channel Kip's energy to a positive course. As it happened, their son did have an affinity for computers. So the Kinkles did what much of the rest of America was doing. They let their son go online.
He could just go up there and do whatever he wanted. You know, a lot of parents don't check on their kids when they're in their room, because they're in the room, they're safe.
The police would later retrieve Kip's internet adventures from the Netscape cache files on his hard drive. The records provide a roadmap of his journey through cyberspace. Kip made stops at the usual destination for young male cyber surfers, at the porn sites. As he surfed the web, his parents, especially his mother, suffered his taste in music. At one point, he printed and framed the lyrics from one of his favorite songs, The Reflecting God, by Marilyn Manson. Police records also show he developed a dangerous new fascination: explosives.
I think that's when he started getting involved with the bombs in his room, and his parents never really checked on him. He was at home, so they think he's automatically safe, but he was, doing some pretty bad stuff.
And once, with the boys in the bus, he cooked up a plan.
Him and a bunch of guys got together and ordered some bomb-making books or bomb-making materials.
They ordered the materials on the internet at school. Where the books turned up, the boys were caught.
And they called Faith and Bill about it, and they had to go down. But that was real upsetting to her. And Kip said that he felt like it would be good to know because he was interested in becoming a policeman. And so I think she probably thought that was maybe true, but probably not.
But Kip somehow got his hands on the bomb books he wanted. Years later, the police would find them when they searched his room. The incident did have the effect of adding more edge to Kip's reputation. Now, he was an expert on bombs.
A lot of people would ask him what he would blow up or what he could make, and he'd rattle off recipes, bomb recipes, which was these big, long, formulas for bombs, like C4 and just big explosives.
The police internet records show that Kip was feeding another interest: in guns. Kip's deep fascination with guns was a distinct departure from the image projected by the Kinkle family.
My parents were both really, really concerned about it. He had been interested in guns from, as far as I can remember, from a little boy. And he was not allowed to have little soldiers. He was not allowed to have any kind of toy that had any kind of violent anything. I mean, violence in our house was a huge no-no.
But police records and the evidence suggest something else. Kip had wanted a BB gun. The police would later confiscate 2 BB guns from Kip's room, one that looks like an assault rifle, the other with its stock sawed off. Kip also wanted a knife. His parents gave him one. The evidence shows that knife became 2 knives and a third. Eventually, Kip gathered a frightening collection of weapons. Then, Kip wanted a real rifle. In fact, Bill had a rifle that he'd been given as a boy, so he dusted it off and gave it to Kip for his 12th birthday. The Kinkle circle of friends would have been surprised to learn of Bill's familiarity with guns. For them, there was only one explanation for the Kinkles' acquiescence to Kip.
He had worn them down, and she didn't like the idea. She wasn't comfortable with it. You know, if she talked to people that also felt that way, and yet, what do I do? What do I do? We've been saying no, 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 no. It's not gotten any better. It just seems to be getting worse. We're fighting more about it. What else do I do?
Other troubles kept coming. In Kip's last winter in middle school, Bill and Faith allowed him to go off on a weekend away at a ski resort with one of the boys from the country.
They were tossing pebbles off an overpass. I don't think they were really directed at the cars. If they hit them, yeah. But if they were just kind of tossing them, and one of them picked up like a fairly decent-sized rock and tossed it over.
The rock hit a passing car. Kip had committed his first felony. He was arrested at his motel.